Weekends and during the week here in Toledo. It's new. 13 ABC's Tony Gaft has told you about it a couple of weeks ago. It's called Trapped Toledo. What's it all about? We will dive into that coming up in our second segment. But we start out today talking about something that came to light earlier this week with the surprise release of this different perspective of the fight that happened between Ray Rice and his fiancee back in February in an Atlantic City hotel elevator. And what we saw, and we're not going to show you the entire video. You've seen it, I'm sure. It is tough as can be to watch again and again. We are going to edit out where she actually is hit. But it has brought to light once again that discussion of domestic violence. There was a lot of pressure put on not only the Ravens organization, but also the NFL to make a move to get Ray Rice out of the league and off that team. A lot of pressure put on Roger Goodell as well, the NFL commissioner this week, to step down. So that is the sports angle of this. However, there is a much bigger conversation, and I'm so glad to have with me Sue Lane Baldwin, Deborah Stoll, and also Jama Hayes, all representing different branches of the YWCA here in Toledo. Ladies, thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate it.
You bet. Deborah, let's start off. And I wanted to say this is a starting point for conversation, but then I kind of backtracked a little bit before we came on today because I don't want to consider this a starting point. This conversation, unfortunately, never ends.
You're absolutely right. Our agency works with many women who are victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. JAMA does a great program with high school youth and prevention angle, and it is an important conversation, and unfortunately it needs to go on all the time because this happens far more often than it should, right here in front of us.
Was it a no-brainer, Sue, when this video was released on Monday and knowing the severity? But I backtrack as well again, and we go back all the way to earlier this year when the first video was released showing her being dragged out of the elevator and laid down, and people assuming what led up to that point. But was it a no-brainer for you guys that this conversation was going to kind of hit a peak this week?
Oh, absolutely. As far as, what was the cause behind her going unconscious and the fact that there needed to be some community outcrying as far as, what needed to happen as a result of what had happened to her.
And I want to bring everybody up to speed out there as well. Each of these ladies representing a different branch of the YWCA here in Toledo. Sue representing, she is director of the Battered Women's Shelter. Deborah Stoll, the director of the Hope Rape Crisis Center. And Jama Green Hayes, director of youth development there at the YWCA. Jama, I said I found it interesting in your daily work and looking at an issue like this, domestic abuse, domestic violence, and trying to get a message to our young people. Maybe they have been influenced by situations at home. Maybe they get influenced by stories like this and fear for what could happen down the road or what they don't want to happen in their life later on. Does all that play into this?
Absolutely. Youth are actually influenced by media far more than they'll recognize. If you ask a youth, or we'll ask a classroom, how much media impacts their lives, they'll say barely any. And then, but our national studies and across the United States show us that absolutely the media, magazines, TV shows, the news absolutely affects every part of their lives and their neighborhoods, and where their neighborhoods, the violence in their neighborhoods, the violence in their homes absolutely affect them.
What's a tough pill to swallow, and I know we've covered stories like this before. We have had numerous occasions, numerous stories here in the Toledo area over the 16 years I've been here covering news, and they're hard to tell stories when somebody is killed, when somebody is severely injured. We had that fallback crutch over the last couple of years saying, well, the economy, it's making things tough. It is one of those conversation points that makes households unlivable sometimes. But we are so past that, using that as a crutch, aren't we, Sue?
Absolutely. There are other types of stressors that cause domestic violence, but I will tell you domestic violence is a choice. People need to be held accountable for their behaviors. You can't come up with an excuse for domestic violence. people need to be held accountable.
And that brings, it's a great point you bring up there. And I want to read a little bit from an opinion piece that I found this week in the Cincinnati Enquirer. I told you I wasn't going to read this to you beforehand because I wanted to get your reaction. But this writer, Charity Morton, she is, and let me look real quick, it had her daily profession. She is simply a server bartender who lives down in Anderson Township, who took this time to write this piece. But she says, and it starts, she only married him because of the money. I'd take an uppercut to the jaw to get part of $25 million. She said she's sorry, so why should he be punished? If she can move past it, why can't we? She didn't care that he hit her. She married him. And she goes on to say, I found all these statements on Twitter this week. All different people, all with the same view. It was Janae Rice's fault that Ray Rice attacked her. Would you tell me it's my fault, she says in this piece? Would you tell my mother it's hers? That we both deserve to be slapped around, that we both deserve to be broken and beaten? Or is it different because our partners were not millionaire athletes? Then you wonder why women stay. And this is the last part. It's because we are told it's really not abuse, that it's normal to fight, that he will change, that God will heal him. Listening to this, and it kind of echoes what you were saying right there, but I also want to point out to our audience, it's not always he on she. Sometimes it is she on he, and we want to get that clear as well today. Sue?
Okay, I'd like to respond in a couple ways to that. First of all, I'd like to say that 97% of the time, men are the primary aggressors. So that's a statistic that is a national statistic that I'd like to say in response to your concern that women can also be primary aggressors. Abuse is never okay, whether it's perpetrated by men or perpetrated by women. So again, I would like to respond by saying that as well. When you say that women stay for economic reasons, or when you say that they stay because of the children, or they stay for whatever, what we're doing is we're placing responsibility for the abuse on our victims. It's kind of like this coffee cup, okay? And I do this, I'm also a therapist by profession. And think of this as, this is 100% of responsibility for abusive behavior, okay? When you take this percent of responsibility and you say, okay, we'll put it on the alcohol. We're gonna put it on the stress of the job. We're gonna put it on the fact that they had a bad day with a friend. Okay, then how much responsibility is left for the domestic violence offender? And then if we're gonna put it on the victim, 100% of the abuse needs to be held accountable to the domestic violence offender. That responsibility goes nowhere else but to that offender.
You guys work with this every day. This week we have all gone through, I mean, it's a lesson in sociology. We have gone through this moment of trying to wrap our minds around, how does this make sense? How can we make sense of this? So many people, Jama, jumped off this week and immediately went to the fact that he's really rich. That is, how do you educate the women, the people you work with day in and day out to make sense of this?
Well, one of the factors of the curriculums that we facilitate in our school systems and in our after-school program is it's a risk building, it's an asset development type of curriculum. So we work with young women and young men to really look into what a healthy relationship is and what a healthy relationship is not. We begin these type of programmings in 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, and continue on with them into 10th grade, and then after in our after-school programs. So really building their self-efficacy, their belief in themselves, their beliefs in self-confidence, and how they are going to react in a situation as that. Yes, money to a teenager is extremely exciting and looks extremely wonderful, and because many of the kids that we work with live in poverty every day, so that's very enticing. But the truth of the matter is building in what is inside them and being resilient to everything that's around them, including money, is the key.
Is there enough education out there to get with these kids, the young kids, and get the message out to them? I mean, you think back to the days when we were all growing up, home ec focused more on being able to not burn your hand on a pan. I went to a religious high school, and we had a Christian lifestyles class, not to, put any of our listeners or viewers out there to say that they didn't take part in something similar, but that focused a lot on life and marriage and making things work, but not everybody gets the luxury of having a class like that to fall back on.
Absolutely, and we have improved. We are doing more education. There's always room for more, and it's extremely important to start very young. The truth is, victim blaming is one of the worst things that we deal with. People don't come forward because instead of looking at the perpetrator, we look at the victim and we say, what did she do wrong, or why didn't she do something to stop it? We have to teach everyone from a very young age. We have to teach society, actually, that that isn't the way to respond. People will not come forward. They will not look for help. That helps to keep them in those bad situations. In Ray Rice's situation, really, why would she want to come forward and expose herself to more criticism and questioning from the world? It's the added incentive to keep it private.
It's our nature to be reactive and to learn from our experiences. We just went through, obviously, the 13th anniversary of 9/11, and we learned so much after that, and our government changed the way it did certain things. But what is the lesson learned? And I'll let this be the last. I'll go down the line. But what is the lesson learned from this week? What do you guys take from this week to apply it, to teach and make understanding better?
That we need to realize that this is a community problem. It's not an individual's problem. It's not my neighbor's problem. It's a community problem. So if you hear,
but is that to say if there's a domestic violence situation happening across the street from me, it's my responsibility to stop it?
But if you see a problem occurring across at your neighbors, you can call the police. If the child comes to you and needs some help, you can certainly make a phone call on their behalf, and we can do something.
I absolutely would encourage people to look at the perpetrator, always, in any crime, instead of looking to the victim and saying, what did they do or fail to do? Let's hold the right person accountable.
Jamie?
I think that a lot of our youth are conditioned to keep things secret, to hold things in out of embarrassment, and it becomes cyclical. It continues on generation after generation, this keeping these things in. So really working with youth.
Well, you don't want to get in trouble. I mean, we all grew up like that.
Yeah.
And they're afraid of what's going to happen
Right,
after they
consequences.
tell. The consequences are absolutely. So working with young women and young men in our program that come to us with teen dating violence, which is an issue.
Yes.
In our community and all over the United States, when they come to us, one of the things that we encourage them is to seek out help. And in our community, we are changing in our judicial system. We are with protective orders for juveniles. We are really making a movement. We're not there yet, but we are certainly going in the right direction. So really encouraging youth to reach out, to tell their stories, and not to hide anymore.
I want to share some phone numbers, if we can put those up for our viewers there at home. Each of the branches of the YWCA represented here, not only the Battered Women's Shelter, but also the Hope Rape Crisis Center and Youth Development. All those numbers available to you around the clock, 888-341-7386, 866-557-7273, and also a local number there. Of course, the toll-free numbers on the top two lines, 419-241-3235. A conversation that we probably could spend a few hours on, but ladies, I appreciate you taking this time to talk with us. Such a tough but necessary conversation. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
thank you.
You bet. Stay right there. We continue on the Roundtable right after this.
Hi, I'm Tony Geftis with this Action News Now update. Toledo police are still investigating a report of gunfire near the Franklin Park Mall that prompted security to evacuate the movie theater around 10 last night. No one was hurt. The Falcons are flying high after a big upset over the Hoosiers. BGSU beat IU 45-42. James Kanapke threw the game-winning touchdown with 9 seconds to go. And Ohio State's fired band director returned to the field. Elmore native John Waters was let go for failing to address the sexualized culture.
1 room, 2 rooms, 3 rooms, how about the whole house? Carpet Spectrum makes this the perfect time to update your home because Carpet Spectrum announces free padding and free whole house installation. Forget about 2-room and 3-room specials. Carpet Spectrum announces free whole house installation. We beat all prices. 1 room, 2 rooms, 3 rooms, or the whole house. We'll install it all free. With these low prices, now is the perfect time to get over to Carpet Spectrum.
This new Art Van leather sofa is urban reinvented, and it fits any style and any body. See all of the Art Van Urban Living collection in the new Art Van 144-page fall catalogue.
The fall collection, now at the lowest introductory prices ever, up to 65% off, plus 0% till 2018. Pick up your copy at any Art Van furniture store or see it online at artvan.com.
Art Van Furniture. Express yourself.
If I went to a restaurant or was at a meeting, sometimes it was very difficult to hear.
Okay, we need another trip to Kenwood. Why would I go anywhere else?
I've noticed you have a hearing aid. Where'd you get that? I always say, I go to Kenwood. They've been wonderful. You feel right at home with them.
I get good service here at Kenwood.
I can hear my daughter now, and she's not saying, you didn't hear me, did you?
I won't go anywhere else either. I love coming here. I'll continue coming here.
Kenwood Hearing Center, brought to you by 13ABC Health Connections.
For breaking news and weather, like 13ABC on Facebook.